Every working artist I know piecemeals an income together from various things. And I think that that's not just true at the local artist level. I think that's true if you're Lady Gaga. We don't all get our money from one thing. Even at the highest level, they're doing advertising. They're starting clothing lines, right? It's artists are scrappy people. And it's about sort of recognizing all your different skills. In being a songwriter and being a band leader, I learned how to chart songs. I've gotten hired to chart songs a lot in my life. It's every skill that I learned in my own creative process, it ended up being something someone else needed from me also. A big shift happened for me in my creative life when I started songwriting coaching, when I started music producing. Personally, what was happening was I was realizing that the stage was not my happy place. My whole creative life was built around, taking the stage and performing. And I just realized that's not where I come alive creatively. I started getting requests, as a music producer, as a songwriter for other artists, to be in the music studio. And for me, that is my creative happy place. I want to make the thing. It was just this long process, I think, of finding that overlap between what I really want to do and what the world wants from me. It took me a while to get there, but once I got here, it was just it's bliss is what it is. How I got into music production is I was just taking every next step in terms of my own creative journey. I was songwriting, then I was helping other songwriters songwrite, then they wanted me to produce their records. But it all came sort of organically from my creative journey. Let me speak to perfectionism. That's a courage. That would fall in the courage category, and I actually have a mission for it. One of my courage missions is called Make a Mistake, and it's basically exposure therapy, I guess. Make a mistake on purpose, survive it, as a practice.
Yeah.
Spiritual practice, man.
Yeah, right.
The anecdote in that mission is this bassist, Dan. He's legendary. He, though, was a perfectionist. It was almost like his perfection became intimidating to him, and then he felt really constrained by it. So he told me he did this thing in the first 15 minutes of any gig. He'd play a wrong note. And that kind of let him get over his perfectionism and actually get to the music. It's you can be one or the other. You can be perfect or you can be brilliant, I define creativity so expansively. It doesn't have to look like art in any traditional sense. It doesn't necessarily have to look like pushing the envelope in any traditional sense. I would say these people that don't like their jobs but are nonetheless fulfilled, what is it that's fulfilling them? And There must be creativity involved on some level if it's creating a beautiful relationship, creating a sweet day-to-day life, whatever it is. I know this is very wide definition of creativity, but I think it must be. I think we have this idea stepping toward creativity is stepping off a cliff. It means quitting your day job today and just, going all in on some kind of not at all formed creativity career. Don't raise the stakes so high that you don't do it. How low can the stakes be so that you do something?
Hello and welcome to the Create or Perish podcast. This is your host, Paul Jansen. And my guest today is Rachel Efron. Rachel is a singer, songwriter, music producer, and one of the most thoughtful voices on creativity today. She works as a songwriting coach and creativity coach in Oakland, California, and has spent the last 15 years helping songwriters find not just better songs, but better access to themselves and to a sustainable creative process. She taught songwriting at the California Jazz Conservatory for 10 years and also ran the Songwriting Salon, which is an online workshop for committed songwriters at every level, and coaches artists one-on-one across every genre imaginable. On the songwriting side, she has written for Journey, that is the stadium rock band Journey, as well as R&B artist Narada Michael Walden, whose album Euphoria also features the likes of Sting, Stevie Wonder, and Carlos Santana. She has released 4 albums of her own, which I'm very interested in delving into. Hopefully we'll have some time to talk about what that process is like as a producer and as a musician. And she has also recently launched a mobile app called Muzy, which is built around understanding and harnessing our creativity, which we are going to definitely be getting into. Rachel, welcome to Create or Perish.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul. That was just about the most generous and that was a beautiful bio. I like that a lot. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. I think being on the receiving end of having somebody introducing you, it always feels like that's like, whoa, are they talking about me? Like, what is
Sometimes
that?
it feels strange, but sometimes it feels lovely. So thank
Yeah,
you.
wonderful. Absolutely. Well, I'm so excited to talk with you today because your work and your interests really dovetail with what we're up to here at Create or Perish, which is understanding. Really, the main emphasis is on what creative work actually looks like for people who are interested in taking on whether it's a vocation or writing a book or becoming a musician or starting a podcast or whatever it is. It's like, what does that actually look like to do the work? Because I think people sometimes don't really understand what it entails to actually succeed at doing something like that. But you kind of are bringing a lot more than that to the table, because not only have you created a livelihood for yourself following that creative impetus, but the subject matter is also creativity itself. So we get to talk about the work that you do and also talk about kind of what creativity is and how important it is. And I know that you have some perspectives on that I'm really keen to get into and share with our audience. But
Amazing.
before we get into it, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your backstory and how you found your way to being a creativity coach and a songwriting coach and a songwriter.
Sure. I'm going to have to start way back.
Start back as far as you'd like.
All right. Well, I didn't write my first song until my last year of college. I always wrote sort of compulsively. I journaled compulsively, obsessed with song lyrics, and I loved playing piano. But I didn't really think there was a place for me in the creative world. It's the thing that made me sad. But I thought, okay, I'm good at school. I'm going to go into academia. I'm going to be a social anthropologist. That was sort of what I thought was about to happen. Then, my senior year of college, I wrote a song because it finally occurred to me to try that, to put the words and the music together. And it felt like a homecoming. It felt like, oh, thank God there's something that I do on earth. It felt sort of like a ringing bell. Not because the song was great.
Well, it was your first song, so, you know.
Yeah. And I am someone who has a lot of conviction. I honestly have not looked back since then. I just started writing songs. And I moved out to California just to put some distance between me and everything I'd done before. And I pursued being a singer-songwriter. And I did that. I toured, I recorded.
So you were pretty young then when you started touring?
I guess so. I mean,
In your
now I work
early
with
20s?
14-year-old artists, and I feel like I started so late. But
Yeah.
I was in my early 20s when I came out here and I started recording and doing shows.
And you moved out there from Maine? Is that where you're originally from?
Yeah, I grew up in Maine.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I went to school in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and then I moved straight here, and I've been here ever since.
Nice.
Yeah, so now I just focused on that for a long time. My whole creative life was my being a singer-songwriter, and then I was funding it by teaching piano lessons.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I was asked to teach the songwriting course at the California Jazz Conservatory at the Berklee Jazz School. And that was kind of this magical moment where I sat down to write a curriculum, and this whole 10-week curriculum just poured out of me. It was like it already existed in my mind from having taught myself how to write songs. I started doing that, and it was like the second time the bell rang. It was like, oh, I also help other artists develop. Did that. with lots of passion for many years. And then at a certain point, my interest, I recognized that my interest wasn't just in helping people write songs. It was like every songwriting coaching session I do, at least half of it was actually about just the relationship to creativity and the way that that needed support. So it was like I was a creativity coach for a long time before I called it that. I just considered it an aspect of the songwriting coaching. Yeah. So then I decided to create this resource to help people access creativity. That's also about the time that people started asking me to produce their albums. And then and that is, I would say, now my main creative pursuit is I'm a music producer. I produce albums for artists.
Incredible. That's a wonderful story. And, I think you talked about this kind of like, ringing of the bell, or this kind of like resounding moment. And I feel like when it comes to creativity, so often that is what happens. And I wonder, how was your upbringing with respect to creativity? I mean, it sounds like you had a pretty easy on-ramp into pursuing creativity, but I feel like oftentimes in our culture, creativity is seen as something you kind of do in your free time. It's a luxury. It's something that you certainly don't try to hang your hat on, or hang a shingle on.
For sure.
And I think we get this culturally, and oftentimes in a lot more potent way from our families and our parents, who want the best for us and oftentimes try to steer us away from the creative world. So how did this gel with your family?
Wow. We're going deep, aren't we?
Well, we don't have to go too deep into it. I'm just curious about
That's a beautiful
I mean,
question.
it's more about the internal,
Mhm.
trust, I guess. Because it sounds like you got this initial kind of resounding aha moment, and you listened.
I
And then you
did.
got the second one and you listened. And that's not
I
always the
did.
case. Oftentimes people get these and they're like, "Oh, but that's not practical. I can't actually
Right.
do that." So you don't need to dig deep into the big, the depths of your family of origin, but just like
Yeah.
what do you attribute to this ability to kind of, listen to that and actually take action on that?
Yeah. Gosh, I think that's my temperament. It wasn't because I grew up supported to be creative. That wasn't the scene that I was born into. And my identity was very much, oh, I was good at school. I think, yeah. If anything, I was encouraged away from it. It wasn't how I was seen. What that meant, though, was that my relationship to music and to writing, it was this little secret world I had. So, like, very publicly, I was good at school. I was a debater. I was like a soccer player. Like, this is the stuff that people in my hometown are aware of. Even like, I would say when I went back like 10, 20 years later to my hometown, people would say, "How's the soccer?" Right? And I'd say, "Oh, I'm a musician now." And they'd be like, "What instrument do you play?" It's like it wasn't my public identity. Yeah. But what that meant was that it was my little cocoon, my personal little refuge. It's kind of a cool thing that it was that. It had this feeling of being protected, I guess, from other people's opinions. Why did I say yes when I wrote that first song? I think that's my temperament. It wasn't from support, and it was doing a thing that was not expected of me and that created some stress. But for me, it was like I was just so relieved that I had a calling. I always wanted one. I always wanted one. I always wanted to be a musician, and I just felt I couldn't justify it. It was sort of
Yeah,
like, oh, I'm not a good enough classical pianist to be one of, you know,
right.
one
It's
of
so
the
competitive at
few
that.
classical pianists. I'm not,
Yeah.
I love studying jazz, but I didn't really feel like I had much to contribute to that conversation. And when I
Hmm.
wrote a song, and it was just like, it was so deeply true to me that that's what I did. It was not between me and my family of origin. It was not between me and my peers or me and my university. It was very much between me and just my spirit and my
Hmm.
yeah, it was a different relationship that I was
Hmm.
answering to in that moment.
That's incredible. No, thank you for sharing. And one of the reasons I'm asking is just personally because it's only been in the last year that I've had the opportunity to really prioritize my music. And it has been kind of like, it's been something that's been, in retrospect now, it's been something that's been, I've seen it as a whisper, but it's, I think, just been a muffled yell.
Oh my God.
And it's just so incredible when it, just like you said, it's kind of like the stars align. Like as soon as I started leaning into it and following the pull, everything in terms of my own internal experience, in terms of the feedback that I get from other people, in terms of you hear people talk about peak experiences, and you just have these kinds of, one experience I had performing in particular, where it's just like, wow,
Wow.
wow, like this is it, like this is, in some form or fashion. And you mentioned, so I want to ask you about well, actually, before we get into that, I want to have you share, if you wouldn't mind, kind of the potted version of your framework around creativity, because I think this is really important, and I think people think about creativity as being, just a kind of a monodimensional thing. Like you've
Yeah.
either got it or you don't.
Yes.
And you have it's such a rich and simple model that you have. So I was wondering if you could just take as much time as you'd like, but if you could just kind of give your summary version
Yeah.
of what creativity is, what are, I'll pause here and let you take
Yeah.
it.
Okay, so I was doing a lot of songwriting coaching. I was teaching the songwriting class. I was doing Songwriting Salon, the ongoing incubator for advanced songwriters. And it was one of my students who came to me and said, I think what you're doing here is meant for more than 12 people. Let's make a thing. Let's make an app. And so I had this really special opportunity to think to myself, okay, what is it that's happening between me and an artist in a room that helps them access more creativity? I had had 10 years of knowing that I could help people access more creativity, but it was all subliminal and intuitive. I had never thought what's actually going on. And is that something that I can put in a bottle and give to someone else? It's very cool. It was such a cool thought exercise. I had to ask myself, what is creativity? Like, what do I think creativity even is? What do you need in order to be creative? So what I came up with, yeah, is that I do believe that we are all inherently creative. I think we all come in with the apparatus to create. I think creativity is our natural state. I think if we're not creating, it's because we're depleted in a resource necessary for creativity. I think when we're resourced for creativity, we can't help but create. So I would say that's probably the most important concept of my framework, is just that creativity isn't something that you have to learn or reach for. It is you, as long as you are dosing yourself with what you need to be creatively well. What I think you need in order to be creatively well is inspiration, courage, discipline, rest, and connection. So this was cool, coming up with those five aspects. What I did was I thought about all the people I'd worked with for 10 years at that point. I thought about them. I pictured the individual people in my mind, and I thought, okay, what is it that I gave to Shannon that helped her? What is it that I gave to Kate that helped her? What is it I gave it to Rick that helped him, right? And it was sort of like I realized that in all these individual cases, it sort of was funneling off into those five categories. Some people, they need help accessing their new ideas. So, they need to resource for inspiration. Some people, they can't find themselves. They can't believe in themselves enough to pull that thing out of them to give to the world. So that's a courage thing. Some people, it's like they have all these great ideas, they have all the courage in the world, but they're not sitting down to work, right? There's some relationship to the idea that gets diffused before a creative action takes place. So that's discipline. For some people, they have all this going on, but there's no space in their minds or their heart. There's just no space for creativity to come in. There's no space for new ideas. So that to me is a rest issue. Rest is the clearing of space inside ourselves for those new ideas to come in. And then connection. I really do think that there are certain specific creativity relationships that we can have in a lifetime that uplift us more than just being in solitude can do by itself.
No, that's beautiful. And I spent the better part of a decade working in the holistic health world as an acupuncturist, and thinking holistically about things is just kind of baked into the cake with that. And, that's one of the things I really love about that model is it's so holistic. And, you have, it's really about balancing. It's kind of a balancing act. And, it's not formulaic. It's not prescriptive. It's very dynamic. And the call that I was on where I met you, it was really interesting to see how other people's, because in the app, and we'll provide a link to the app in the show notes here, but the app basically gives you a profile of how you score in all of these, and it's kind of like a fingerprint. And it gives you this unique kind of profile that gives you awareness around what it is that you are maybe overcompensated in, and then other areas where you're undercompensated. It was so interesting to see other people's little kind of star diagrams. And so any final thoughts you want to share about that? Anything else that came to mind as I was saying you wanted to respond to?
Yeah, what came to mind is just that when left to our own devices, we tend to keep throwing the same thing at a problem. For me, I'm really disciplined, very disciplined. So if I can't write a song, if I'm running up against a wall with a song, I just keep trying. I just keep working and trying and getting nowhere, right? Because discipline is not my depleted resource. I've got discipline, right? So for me, it's like, okay, what is actually depleted here? For me, it's one of two things. It's either I need some rest, I just need to clear some space, and then I know what the answer is, or I need some inspiration, in which case it's about finding a way to be more receptive to my ideas, finding a way to spark some new ideas by going into the world, by perusing a bookshop, by reading something, by letting that dialogue with the world resume again. But other people are like this too. Super inspired people, if they're not making progress, they just keep delighting in their ideas and bemoaning that they're not doing any work, right? Because what they probably need is some discipline, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I'm with someone, I am intuitively doing this diagnostic. If someone's like, I'm not creating, then I get them talking about what's going on, and it's sort of like, okay, they need some courage, right? And then I sort of intuitively start helping them build up that resource. So the creativity assessment that you take in the app, it's 30 questions, but it's basically like my summary of what a 5-minute conversation with someone who comes to me for creativity coaching is. You answer these 30 questions, I can tell you what your resourcing looks like, and then you get a picture of your creative spark.
Right. Well, that's great. And I think the primary takeaway that you began with about creativity being our natural state is so vitally important. And this really comes down for me to kind of a philosophical quandary that many of us face in our culture, where we don't see something like creativity as going all the way down, as it were. We have a culture that's very kind of a physicalist, scientific. There must be a scientific reductionistic explanation for how things work or what things are. And so language even around how our brain works, around wiring and around these computer metaphors, it really, I think, in our educational system oftentimes is bereft of, thinking for oneself, creative self-expression. We're taught to, sit in a chair, follow instructions,
Yeah.
and be a good cog in the wheel when we, So I think this idea of creativity, the way that I think about this, just to kind of like put it in a very succinct nutshell, is that as human beings, we're not separate from the creation of the universe. We're not apart from that. We're
Yeah.
an expression of the
Yeah.
creativity of the universe. It can't be any other way. And it's a beautiful way as a human being to have that capacity for creative expression. But we are creative expression. And to your point, if we're put in the right environment, we have the right kind of context, we have, I love your emphasis on relationships. I think that is so important when you have all of those things, and I think one last thing I'll just kind of throw into the mix here is I think a lot of people have a very constrained idea of what creativity is. I mean, if you look at something like entrepreneurship, as a very creative process. If you look at something like, working through a conflict with a friend or a partner or something,
Yeah.
that's a very creative process.
Yes.
Figuring out how to get out of a pickle that you found yourself in. That's creativity, all of these things. And I think as soon as you kind of change your perspective on what creativity is, you know what to look for. It's like, oh, wow, to your point, we are creative beings, and there's evidence of that at every step. But I do want to thank you. I do want to shift gears here, and you mentioned something, and this is something you see all the time in the arts in particular. You mentioned that you funded your music by teaching piano.
I did.
Now, this is related to, obviously it's still music, so you're doing something music related to pay for the music. But so often, there's this kind of starving artist idea where if you're going to choose the arts or you're going to choose to follow whatever, this muse is that's, having these bells go off in your life saying, hey, pay attention, this is something that is in alignment for you, that you're then choosing a life where you're not going to have financial stability, you're not going to have, the kinds of things that a lot of people are striving for. So you have obviously made a way into, professional career on a multitude of different fronts that, from the inside and from the outside is something that is meaningful, respectable, sustainable, stable. And so just kind of transitioning into the conversation, kind of more on the practical side of things.
Yeah.
What have you learned, I guess, what are the first things that come to your mind when it comes to, reconciling the realities of the world that we live in terms of needing to make a living and the need to have alignment as an artist? Like, how have you figured, what were some of the early learnings around how to square that circle?
Sure. First I want to say I think there's a lot of pretty negative mythology about what artistry is, right? Artists are drug addicted, artists are oversensitive, artists are mentally ill. And then the one you're speaking to, artists are broke, right? And I
Right.
think we can be suspicious about all of this. I think none of this has anything to do with what artists are. And it's effectively just a mechanism of othering artists in our culture because they're seditious, but othering artists in ourselves because we don't want to have to go that deep, right? It's terrifying, right? So there's a lot of effort put into these myths about artists, and people really are like 10 toes down on it. Like, you can talk to someone and they'll be like, yeah, no, not all artists are drug addicted. Oh, but they are mentally ill, and there's no statistical correlation between these myths and what's real, right?
Right.
We tend to pick an example of an artist that's this or this or this, and then And then that's the big example of artists being all of these very scary things. So yeah, artists are broke. I think that that is a way of keeping people from being artists and keeping ourselves from being artists, right? If we tell ourselves, "Oh my God, artists are broke," then you never have to take that risk, not a financial risk, the emotional risk to be an artist,
Right.
right? Okay,
Yeah.
there. That's that little soapbox. Now I'll talk practical.
I love it. No,
What have
it's,
I learned?
it's
What have
great.
I learned about making a living as an artist? I think the first thing I learned, and my first idea was, okay, I'll get a day job I don't care about. I was an admin assistant until 2 p.m. And then I'll go home and I'll turn my heart back on and I'll create. I learned that that didn't work for me. If I power down, I'm down.
How long
I
did you last?
What's that?
How long did you last?
Oh my
Weeks?
God. Oh,
Days?
it was a terrible like 8 months. It was very
Right.
bad. I was a terrible admin assistant. I was truly, truly not equipped to be an admin assistant. Yeah. Um, yeah, I am someone who needs to be awake and alive and excited every minute of the day. And I think other artists are like that too. So I realized I had to find a way to make money that I was excited about. So yeah, for me, that was teaching piano. It was sweet. I mean, what a beautiful thing to do on earth, you know? Teach piano lessons to kids and adults. And yeah, uh, it worked. It worked for that time in my life where I wanted my creative life to be singer-songwriter and I wanted to support it in doing something that felt great to me. I think an important creativity relationship is having mentees. So I think it was good for my creative health on some level. I was always giving in
Mm,
addition to learning about music.
yeah.
Also, though, piano teaching leads to piano teaching. Piano teaching is not a road to anything besides piano teaching.
Gotcha. Right.
So it was not actually leading me toward what I really wanted to do.
Right. Right.
Um, being a teacher, being a piano teacher, as beautiful as it is not why I'm on the earth. So yeah, I would say a big shift happened for me in my creative life when I started songwriting coaching, when I started music producing. Personally, what was happening was I was realizing that the stage was not my happy place. My whole creative life was built around, taking the stage and performing. And I just realized that's not where I come alive creatively. I
Mm,
don't really want to be on a stage.
yeah.
I'm pretty shy.
Yeah.
And so I started getting requests, as a music producer, as a songwriter for other artists, to be in the music studio. And for me,
Mm,
that is my creative happy place. I want to make the thing.
yeah.
And yeah, I just started getting asked to develop songs, to write for other people, to make this app, to produce albums. I started saying yes to everything. And yeah, it was just this long process, I think, of finding that overlap between what I really want to do and what the world wants from me. It took me a while to get there, but once I got here, it was just like, I mean, it's bliss is what it is.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think having the long game in mind and having, trust in the process, I think those are really important principles for people who are really finding a calling of sorts,
Yeah.
that they're following because it doesn't necessarily happen overnight. And trusting that at some point there will be, I mean, when you start to have people asking you things
Yeah.
or giving you certain feedback, you see yourself back to your point, your importance of relationships. You start to see yourself reflected back in how other people are seeing the value that you're bringing. And
Yeah.
you may see value that you had no idea was there
It's true.
until people start to ask you or
So
provide
well said.
feedback.
No, people teach you what your value is. And just listen and ask them. And yeah.
Yeah. So
I have some more practical advice though. I do.
Yeah.
I don't think I really answered your
Well,
question.
what is it like? I mean, that was just kind of to get us into the conversation. I think a lot. Let's talk about music production because that's kind of really your main arena. It seems like. Talk a little bit, and let's frame this through the lens of somebody who's just getting started at producing music.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the learning curve. Tell me a little bit about the time involved in terms of like hours per day, hours per week, to create something, a little squeeze of juice like a song. You're squeezing this juice out of the orange. What does it actually look like to do that? Like,
Yeah.
what is the on-ramp into learning how to be a music producer?
I think there's probably as many ways to be a music producer as there are music producers. It means such a vastly different thing to different people. And I think the way I do it's pretty unique. But what music producer is to me is that I'm this songwriting coach. I'm helping people develop their songs. I'm kind of co-writing with them, but it's their song. So it's more like holding space for them to come into the fullness of their song. And then at a certain point, it's like, okay, what soundscape is needed? What beat is needed? What shaping is needed? What sonic journey is needed? So it's taking this nascent little guitar vocal demo, right? And for me, it is listening into that and being able to hear what the whole band is doing. So how I got into music production is I was just taking every next step in terms of my own creative journey. I was songwriting, then I was helping other songwriters songwrite, then they wanted me to produce their records. But it's all came sort of organically from my creative journey. This is sort of what I wanted to say on the practical side also, Paul, is that I think every working artist I know piecemeals an income together from various things. And I think that that's not just true at the like local artist level. I think that's true if you're Lady Gaga. I think we don't all get our money from one thing. Like even at the highest level, they're doing advertising. They're starting clothing lines, right? It's like
Right.
artists are scrappy people. And it's about sort of recognizing all your different skills. Like in being a songwriter and being a band leader, I learned how to chart songs, right?
Yeah.
It's like I've gotten hired to chart songs a lot in my life. It's like every skill that I learned in my own creative process, it ended up being something someone else needed from me also. So I think that is the artist job stability. Like whereas someone who has a 9 to 5, their stability is that they have an employer, which to me doesn't seem very stable because you can get fired. I think artist stability is we have like 6 different things
Mm-hmm.
that are sources of our income, and no one can fire us from them.
Right. Exactly. And they're extremely life-giving
Yeah. Yes.
at the same time.
Right. Of course. That's the main thing.
So what was the process like for building out the app? Like
Yeah.
what was that journey like kind of on the back end of things?
Yeah.
My uncle has this saying, anytime you see something, he's speaking specifically about performance. You see an amazing performance, but it applies to anything. You see an app or an iPhone or technology that's really incredible. He says, it's always what you don't see. You don't see the 10,000 hours, that went
Right.
into whatever the performance was. So you have this amazing app, it's kind of, does all these, it's just, captures the thing that you're hoping to capture. It's got this, really impactful, process that it guides people through. What was it like to bring that into the world?
It's crazy. It's been so cool to make this thing, right? First of all, it was just getting right with my thoughts, like figuring out, okay, what's my framework, building out this methodology. Like depending on whether you have low inspiration or low courage, you get specific support. right? People with low courage will get courage support. People with low inspiration will get inspiration support. So it was like building out the whole methodology and all of the different tools and prompts that people get given depending on what their profile is. It meant creating this creativity assessment and then testing it on so many artists, sitting with various artists for like a year and just sitting with them while they took the assessment and reacted to each question. So I could make sure that what I was asking was what they were answering. It meant figuring out an aesthetic. I learned how to be a graphic designer effectively, right? I learned how to be a visual person. I'd never thought about what anything looked like, but now now I design a lot in Figma every day. It meant learning how to interact with coders.
Yeah.
Right? The app developers. It meant learning how to be a project manager. More recently, it's been learning how to make an investor pitch deck and talk to potential investors. It's been revenue models. I mean, I am bewildered by what I have learned.
There's so much, isn't there?
I mean, me coming up with revenue projections and we don't know each other very well, but trust me, that was not in the cards.
That's incredible. Well, fortunately, you have discipline in your working in your favor to
this audacity that I can learn everything. You
right.
know?
Yeah, I went back to school, almost 12 years ago now, to study. It was a cognitive science degree. It was really focusing on learning optimization.
Wow.
And I worked on my thesis project getting out of school was dovetailed with an entrepreneurial project, which was a music education app that basically served as an interface between private music teachers and their students' at-home practice space. So the teacher could, kind of stay up to speed with whether or not the student's been engaging in their material. There were like leaderboards and certain things, trying to pull some social levers to get motivation transferred into the kids, home experience. And but anyway, it didn't end up materializing, but I went through all of the same the whole process, everything that you just described, and talking to developers and to the design team and building pitch decks, and just I remember being so flabbergasted by and you've probably been through this enough in your creative journey that maybe this wasn't as surprising to you, but it was so jarring to me, the disconnect between the creative process of the ideation and then the reality of what it actually, you talk to a computer programmer about what they need to have certain features in their user interface. Like it has to click into these places, and this button has to do this thing that goes to this place. And all of a sudden, your idea that was just kind of floating in the cloud has to become condensed down, and it gets challenged in that process.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering what your, what was that experience like? I mean, did you have to kill your darlings, as they say in the writing world, in terms of things that you had gotten attached to in the idea phase that didn't translate to the development of the app?
I think I'm still doing that. What I have been doing for the last 3 weeks, actually, is rewriting the entire curriculum.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did. Right now, there are 25 of what I call reflections, 25 missions, and then there's these meditations and these kits. But the heart of it right now is these reflections and these missions. And I was going through all of them to share them with someone who's interested in them. In looking back through it, I was like, oh, okay, I made this a year and a half ago. I can see now that it's not what it needs to be. That's exciting,
Yeah.
It's like, great. I see better now. It's like, oh man, I've also been doing a lot of user interviews. So I have a sense of like, what's not working the way I meant it to. I was like, okay, I know what they need to be now. there's a too muchness about all of it. I actually needed to get rid of a lot of the content and really streamline it. So yeah, I think that would have been painful a year and a half ago when I first made it. If someone had said, "Oh, you need to trash this," it would have been like killing my darling, and it would have been hard.
Mm.
A year and a half later, I feel like, oh, thank God I can see this, and all I want to do is just make it less busy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think creativity is always that, right? It's always
Right.
like you start with an idea. An idea is 100% potential. Turning that into an actual thing always is loss. Potential is infinite. Once you make something, it's finite. It's terribly finite, right? It's
Right.
like I don't know, people don't talk about this, but there's like a lot of loss in creativity because every
Yes.
time you make something, it's not potential anymore. It's
Right.
just what it is.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and you have to sort of find beauty in that.
Mm.
And I do. Yeah.
What advice do you have for people who are in the creative process around perfectionism and around procrastination, using perfectionism as a means to avoid shipping the thing? I'm sure you've experienced this yourself, and I'm sure you've experienced with artists that you've worked with. Because I think that, a lot of times we see something and something that we're working on and we're not quite satisfied with it.
Yeah.
And there's something about that artistic, I don't know, like just that it fits the vision in a way. And if you are too invested in that, then you sacrifice actually putting anything out there. And so what advice do you have around procrastination and perfectionism?
Let me speak to perfectionism. So for me, that's a courage. That would fall in the courage category. And I actually have a mission for it. One of my courage missions is called Make a Mistake. And it's basically like exposure therapy, I guess. But it's
Nice.
sort of this idea that, you know, make a mistake on purpose, survive it, as a practice,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
spiritual practice, man.
Yeah. Right.
The
Right. Right.
anecdote in that mission is this bassist I used to work with, who is kind of perfect. This bassist, Dan, he's legendary. And he, though, was a perfectionist. It was almost like his perfection became intimidating to him, and then he felt really constrained by it. So he told me he did this thing in the first 15 minutes of any gig. He'd play a wrong note.
No kidding. Wow.
And that kind of let him get over his perfectionism and actually get to the music, right? Because
Right. Right. Right.
it's like you can be one or the other. You can be perfect or you can be brilliant, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Mm.
it's a mistake practice, and it in other ways I think it's about building up that courage resource. Because perfectionism is a way of limiting yourself. It's this self-belief that all you have to offer is like following the rules. So you need some more of that audacity that like what you have to offer is much cooler than getting something right.
Right. There is too, though. I've been wrestling with this because I don't think I told you this when I was in conversation with you in the lead up to this, but you're my first guest for this podcast.
Ooh la la. How's it
Yes.
going?
It's going wonderfully. I'm so happy to have you on. You are the perfect first guest for this. But I had started another podcast. I had started, like I said, so many different things and had to scale back. And during this period of time, I had the opportunity to work with actually one of the people I interviewed for the other podcast. The label would probably be like a business coach. But I had the opportunity to work with him for about 6 months on a project, and decided at the end of working with him that it was not what I wanted to do. And then, as you know, the clarity began to come, it was this creator parish project was actually more fundamental. It kind of got more to the heart of what I wanted. It's kind of, you speaking to creativity being a little bit deeper to songwriting. There was something deeper. The first project was called Break a Leg Labs, and it was about, I suffered from tremendous performance anxiety. And so it was about helping people get on stage. I had just gone through this transition of being completely incapacitated by the idea of getting on stage to actually having done so successfully. And so that was kind of the idea. But, it's related to perfectionism in the sense that there was something about it that wasn't right. And there was, and then there's also a related, it's more related, I think, to this conversation, which is, sometimes you are working on, let's say, a song, and there's something that's not quite right about it.
Yeah.
I was trying to rework I've been learning a lot of covers lately, and I've been learning Tennessee Whiskey, Chris Stapleton version. And I've been working for about 3 months on that main riff that he is just so quintessential Chris Stapleton. And this person I've been playing with, he was like, dude, just like do your own thing. Like, don't do his thing. Like, you're just going to keep crashing and burning. And so I'm working on my own way to do the riff where I can do it with confidence. But there's something about, two sides to that coin, I guess, is like getting up and performing anyway, knowing I'm not going to nail the riff. Like there's courage in that, to your point. There's self-acceptance and knowing that I am not perfect. But then there's also there's still something that's not right, and I need to address it. And so the way that I've kind of worked around that is I allow myself the ideal kind of sense of perfecting, if not perfection itself. But I don't act on it now for this thing. I'm like, okay, when I do this, I'm going to give the performance now and it's going to be imperfect. I'm going to, ship, maybe it's a newsletter, maybe it's a podcast, whatever it is, I'm going to ship it. I'm not going to let that perfectionism stop me from doing the thing, but I'm also going to allow myself to listen to that voice of getting better so that the next time around I can, improve on whatever the thing was. So there's kind of there's some complexity there that I've found as I've wrestled with this.
No, that's interesting. And it's sort of a question of what is better? Like, how do you define better? Is better more perfect, or is better more you?
Great point.
The thing I'm thinking about with courage lately, for a while I was just defining courage sort of against the foil of confidence. I was like, you don't need confidence to create, right? You can be plagued with self-doubt and you can still create. What is it you need? Courage, which is you create anyway. That's all I was saying about courage. And what I realized more recently is that there's more I want to say about courage. I like to think of courage kind of as individuation. Something crazy about creativity is it actually requires you to be who you are. If you're not cool with what's yours to make, you're not going to create effectively. So you have to just concede that you are this quirky individual.
Yeah.
Right? We don't really get to choose what we make. We don't really get to choose what we write about. It's like, I can't write well about something that doesn't interest me. I have to write about the petty thing I wish I didn't care about.
Right.
You have to just surrender to who you are and then do it on purpose, right? I'm being funny about it, but there's this way that creativity, unlike other stuff, requires you to be an individual. So I love your example that in doing this cover, you're trying to replicate this other guy's riff, and your friend says, oh, make it your own. Because I wonder in that, it's why are you doing a cover? It's not to do exactly what's been done. That's not terribly interesting. It's maybe interesting on an ego level, I can do it just like him. But what's creatively interesting is different. What's creatively interesting is what's yours to bring here. So maybe better isn't more like Chris Stapleton, right? Maybe better is more like what is really yours to bring to that song.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And I love the authenticity, and, it really gets back to the heart of the conversation that we started with around creativity and where it comes from. I mean, there is kind of this wellspring that is what it is.
Yeah.
And you can either kind of, surrender to that or not. And I really like the idea of individuation as well. I have a quote here that I have on my desk from Carl Jung.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Circa 1912. It's couched in language around evil, which is interesting, but whatever.
We'll allow
So
it.
he says, we'll allow it. He says, the spirit of evil is negation of the life force by fear. And I
Yeah.
think we can let life force, we can substitute creativity. So the spirit of evil is negation of the life force by fear. Only boldness, let's substitute in courage. Only boldness or courage can deliver us from fear. And this is the part for me that has this on my desk, if the risk is not taken, the meaning of life is violated.
Yeah, that's heavy. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that you grabbed that quote.
It's powerful, and it's
Yeah,
exactly what we're talking about.
it
It's like
is.
if you don't listen to that, if you don't answer that call, if you don't follow that, and I wonder if it's more true for some people than other people. I'm not sure. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that, because I was exposed to a lot of Indian mysticism and Indian culture, and there's this idea in some of those cultures and traditions around people having like four different kind of personality dispositions. Some people are more like warriors. Some people are more like, merchants. Some people are more, manager types. Some people are more thinkers. I'm wondering if it's more important for this kind of alignment. And I'm just thinking of people in my life that I know who don't really seem to have a lot of, um, alignment with, they don't necessarily enjoy their jobs. They don't necessarily have a lot of, and they seem perfectly happy and, vitalized and love life. And they seem really well individuated. And so I'm just wondering do you think that some people have more of a need to follow this voice or follow this vocational kind of
Mhm.
path?
Maybe. I mean, I guess I define creativity so expansively. And I know
Mm.
you do too, because you're talking about entrepreneurship as creative. And that's one of the creative categories you can choose on my app. And I also know that someone used Muzy recently to help her navigate her intimate relationship.
Oh, wow.
So she
Oh,
recognized,
creative.
she's like, I'm having relationship issues. And her friend said, have you tried Muzy? And so she used it for her marriage, right? And
That's
I
cool.
love that
That's
because
really
I
cool.
think, yeah, I define creativity so expansively. I really define it as like, you know, yeah, recognizing who you are, what you have to offer, and then sort of participating in it actively rather than just passively. So it doesn't have to look like art in any traditional sense. It doesn't necessarily have to look like pushing the envelope in any traditional sense. I would say these people that don't like their jobs but are nonetheless fulfilled, like what is it that's fulfilling them? And
Right.
there must be creativity involved on some level if it's creating a beautiful relationship,
Right.
creating a sweet day-to-day life, whatever it is. I know this is very wide definition of creativity, but I think it must be.
No, I think you're right. And it reminds me of the book, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the kind of the godfather of flow science.
Oh,
He has a book actually, and actually recommend to anybody who's interested in the subject of flow to listen to the audiobook of the book called Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, because it's read by him, which is really interesting. But he showcases various people in this article, or in this book rather, who are experiencing flow states. And one of the people that he featured was a guy who worked in a factory.
mm,
And he talked about how I mean, essentially, the frame I look at it through it is gamification. He essentially gamified the process and would seek to excel at various aspects of how he did this particular thing and how he did that particular thing. And he had this own kind of internal world that he had created around this task that he then had a lot of sense of self-worth and, self-actualization, about being somebody who's basically mastered this thing. But it was this ongoing, thing of transforming something that would otherwise be menial work into something that was very enriching. So I think that's very much in line with what you're speaking to. Yeah. Well, Rachel, do you have what advice would you give to somebody who is, let's say, kind of stuck in the straitjacket of modernity, the straitjacket of expectations, self-imposed or otherwise, and they have perhaps heard some resounding bells ringing around songwriting, around music in general? What kind of advice would you give to people as we land the plane here around how to navigate that, tuning into that call and finding their way forward?
Maybe you don't need to raise the stakes too high. I think we have this idea like stepping toward creativity is like stepping off a cliff. Like it means quitting your day job today and just, going all in on some kind of not at all formed creativity career. It's like, don't raise the stakes so high that you don't do it. Like how low can the stakes be so that you do something, right? Like how can you start being creative today, tomorrow? Start building yourself the creative life of your dreams before you step away from your current life, so that there's no cliff involved.
Yeah.
I'm actually just telling you all the advice I literally gave someone last week who called me, says, I want to quit my day gig and just be a singer. And I was sort of saying to her, like, okay, what do you have to offer the arts? It was so clear to me she can do voiceover work. That was never an option for me. I'm not a good enough singer to kind of be a singer for hire in studios or do voiceover work. But I'm like, this woman, she has that pristine voice. I'm like, that's a way for you to start supporting yourself in the arts, start piecemealing an income. You also do some teaching, but don't quit your day job before you taught a lesson, because you might hate it,
Right.
And then beyond all that, just begin your creative practice. Every day. You don't have to carve 2 hours. It's like lower the stakes. Like let it be for 10 minutes. I feel like people are like, oh, I can only create if I have 3 uninterrupted hours. That's so not true. If you have 3 uninterrupted hours, you're not going to create. You're going to freak out. Like it's much easier to create if you have 10 minutes only, right? So just start doing it in these little ways that start giving you creative fortitude, and then let it expand organically.
Beautifully said. Wonderful note to leave on.
Okay.
And thank you so much, Rachel, for this wonderful conversation. And hopefully we can have you back at some point. And there's so many different side roads that I restrained myself from following, because it's just like, okay, we've got to stay on track here. But this is absolutely wonderful. How can people find you should they be interested in the work that you do?
Yeah, you can go to my website. It's rachelefron.com. That's RACHELEFRON.com, my first and last name. You can get in touch with me directly there if you have thoughts about songwriting coaching, creativity coaching, anything like that. And as far as Muzy, definitely check out Muzy. It's free to download, and you take the creativity assessment, see your spark. Do at least that, because you learn a lot just doing that. And if you search Muzy, Muzi, creativity, in the Apple App Store, it will come up. Sure. But I think we'll put
I'll put links to everything. That into your website. You have a very nice newsletter as well. I just got one the other day, so I'll put a link to that as well.
Brilliant.
So thanks again, Rachel. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. This has been lovely. I can't believe I was your first, and you're so suited for this. You're
wonderful.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we will see you next time.